so let's give 5 minutes for people to log in and allow our technical team to properly set up so that we can start at 9:05 a.m. sharp. Okay. So team, can you hear me clearly? Because I speak directly with my computer. I do not have the earphone or a mic with me. Make sure you can hear me properly, okay?
Very clear.
Very clear, Derek.
Very clear.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you. So our speakers, we will start our session in 3 minutes, and then we'll stick to plan A, okay? Since Pakade has found very good options for her place. All right, we have 1 more minute to go before we start our introductions. Okay, team, are we ready? Okay, let's give 1 more minute to have our logistic done before we start. All right, I think let's start, and then while we also waiting for the people to sign in, so let me say a very good morning and warm welcome to our speakers, KICPAA members, friends, ladies and gentlemen. I hope everyone is safe during this challenging time. With more cases, including lockdown in some part of our country, I know it's a bit challenging, right, for our social, emotional, and economic activities. But congratulations for those in Phnom Penh and the Khmer for the end of lockdown effective today. It's a good time for catching up. Okay, on behalf of KICPAA, I would like to say thank you to all of you for attending our live webinar on CFO Top Priority 2022 and beyond. Given global and in-country COVID situations, CFOs are taking on greater strategic and enterprise building role in guiding their companies, institutions to successfully overcome COVID-19 challenges, as there has been and there will be a lot of uncertainty, business disruptions, liquidity issues, compliance issues, operational adaptation, and risk management that CFO need to handle. CFO has been playing and will be playing crucial role as business partner to strategically survive, recover, and grow the business during and post-COVID-19 crisis. So the topic today is very important topic for CFO and finance professional to grasp practical knowledge, tips, and tactics from our key speakers to better prepare with some strategies, plan, and activities for year ahead. By way of introductions, my name is Kun, as you see on the screen. I'm the managing partner of KICPAA Professional Accountants, an active member firm of KICPAA. I am also a governing council of KICPAA and a vice chair of registration and membership committee. By that, I have a very exciting news to share with you later on today. And I will be your moderator throughout the course of this webinar. Before we get started, I wanted to cover some of the housekeeping rules and logistics to ensure that we have a smooth, effective, and fruitful webinar for all. For this webinar, our participants will not be able to speak or raise their question directly or verbally to our speakers. Instead, you will be able to write your questions into our Q&A chat room directly. So please kindly mute yourself if you haven't done so. And I encourage you to write questions at any time during the course of our webinar. If you encounter any technical issues, please drop your question in the chat room too. So our team will address those immediately. After the webinar, you will receive a thank you letter and feedback form from our team to complete, and then you will be able to download the PowerPoint presentation right away. Before I formally introduce you to our speakers and walk through the topic today, allow me to brief you all about KICPAA and the exciting news from KICPAA that I mentioned earlier. So let's start with a KICPAA presentation just to give you who we are. So I'm not sure how many of you aware or know about KICPAA, but KICPAA stands for Cambodia Institute for Certified Public Accountants and Auditors. We are the only professional accountancy body in the country that is established and recognized by the law of Cambodia. So we were first set up in 2002 by the law on corporate account and their audit, and then upgraded in 2016 with the law of accounting and auditing. And I want to be bold on one thing. KICPAA is the only professional accountancy body in Cambodia that is recognized widely by our regulators, which means accounting and auditing regulators. If you want to operate as the audit firm, accounting firm, or tax agent, but also recognized by Security and Exchange Commissions if you want to go for IPO audits. We also recognized by NBC, the National Bank of Cambodia, if you want to obtain permit for bank and financial institution audit. So that's where we are. All of our members are eligible to obtain all of these licenses from various regulators. And more importantly, we are widely recognized by the public. So the exciting news that I want to announce to all of you today, and the point is, I'm not promoting KICPAA or selling KICPAA, but this is a good news, an exciting news for all of you as professional accountants, CFO, and finance professional. It's quite a great news for you, to me. As part of our strategic plan 2020 to 2024, KICPAA is recruiting members to join our growing accounting profession. What do we mean by growing accounting profession here? With the accounting law and audit law, which is established in 2016, and the enforcement has been started this year with a lot of penalty. So thousands of enterprises will have three main obligations: the obligation to maintain accounting record, the obligation to submit financial report, and the last obligation is to do statutory audit of the financial statement. So these are the obligation of enterprise that will push the demand in accounting and auditing service. So to me, that's a golden opportunity for all of us as finance professionals, CFO, for this profession. And congratulations for all of you who attended today and hear this good news. Team, go to next slide, please. For us, here the members that we are looking at to recruit are, we have 5 categories of members, and you need to check out with our secretariat which type of category of members that you are entitled or qualified for. So we have active member, auditor, which are audit partners and those auditors who set up an audit firm. Active member accountant, for those who want to practice providing accounting services. Affiliate members, which also allow to do certain scope of work in accounting. Associate members and student members. And here at the right-hand side of the member benefit, ranking from recognition from regulators, which I do not want to mention here, which I already mentioned, recognition by public, recognized by the GDT, General Tax Department, which you can become automatically tax agent. You are also benefit in joining seminars and networking events like the one that we are doing today. We have CPD events. You can also join our AGM and update of law, regulation, and accounting standard, and many more benefits that we could not highlight all here. Okay, so here are the benefit. Tim, we have one more slide to go, I believe. Yes, so these are the busy category of member, which are audit firm and accounting firm. So for those who are active auditor, can set up audit firm with full services. So if you are an audit firm, you can offer accounting plus auditing service, while accounting firm, which are active accountants, you have limited scope to accounting services. And here are the benefit, which I would not walk you through, but you can operate under the law of the Kingdom of Cambodia. Next slide, please. Yes, so as I mentioned earlier, only KICPAA members are eligible to obtain accounting and auditing license from various regulators, including accounting and auditing regulator, SECSI, and National Bank of Cambodia. So it's a golden opportunity. Start with first step, becoming our member, and second step, you can be an audit firm, accounting firm recognized by accounting and auditing regulators, NBC or SECC. Thank you. So work with us. Next slide, please. I think we have the last slide. Yeah, so for more information, please contact our secretariat. And as I reiterate again, it's a golden opportunity for all our CFO finance professional. And I believe some of you or most of you are ACCA members or affiliates or some sort of professional accountant. So I encourage you to use the opportunity now rather than later. Thank you so much. So without wasting more time, let me walk you through the agenda of this morning and introduction of our speakers. So we have 3 main topics to cover and followed by question and answer session to give you insight from different key speakers with years of professional experiences and track record, as well as to give you opportunities to ask clarification questions and build on that. Earlier, I said the topic is very important, but what is more special today for this webinar is the fact that we have top CFO from various industries and an honor to have ACCA regional team to share their practical know-how from their industry perspective, just to offer you different flavor and taste of CFO role and challenges they face in the country, region, and globally. So let me firstly introduce you to our speakers. First, introduce you to Ms. Pakade, Chief Financial Officer of Trust Royal Bank, very popular bank, as you know. Pakade has more than 17 years of professional experiences in diversified industry, including auditing, banking, and merchandising. She is an associate member of CPA Australia. Pakade will walk us through the topic leading through uncertainty and chaos. Welcome our second speaker, Olivier Hubert, partner of interim CFO of Audit CFO. Olivier has many years of professional experience in the region in audit, financial management role with public listed company. He holds masters in finance, and Olivier is a fellow member of CPA Australia. Olivier will walk us through the second topic, break away from numbers by being a strategic player. Our third speakers, Sarah Martin, regional consultant, ACCA. Sarah has combination of professional experience, ranging from risk, strategies, to thought leadership, and professional insight in Asia and Australia and New Zealand, as well as Asia. He holds diploma in financial strategies, and Sarah is a fellow member of ACCA, a very popular and global accountancy body. Sarah will walk us through the accountant of the future, preparing for decades of the 2020s. So I do hope everyone get excited and ready for our sessions. Without any more delay, firstly, I would like to invite our first speaker, Ms. Pakade, Chief Financial Officer of Trust Royal Bank, to walk you through the first topic, leading through uncertainty and chaos. Please welcome her with a thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Darrett, and good morning, everybody, and welcome to our webinar session today. So firstly, I'm apologize where I actually cannot turn on my video because of my internet bandwidth is super slow today. I don't know why. I suppose everyone go back to work, and somehow I'm in the orange zone. I'm still in the blockage, so internet would be much better, but it little bit worse than what we've been prepared for. So apologize for that. But please stop me if I'm speak too fast or too slow or something you need to clarify, Mr. Director. Please stop me. So thanks so much for today's session, and I'm very honored to join today's session. To be honest, which is my first time, and my privilege as well to participate in the very former CFO, Mr. Olivier, as well as Sarah. So I'm glad to be in here as well. So without further ado, yes, my name is Pakade. I'm currently working as the CFO at Trust Royal, and you know that Trust Royal is just about a year and a half transition from ANZ, which is started long ago in 2005. So the topic today is more not pretty much about number. It's just like Mr. Darrett has mentioned, because I'm talking from experience perspective where the CFO had to be moved on, and which is more enterprise level. Where we play our role because we actually our strong is our number, and on top of that strategic and other enterprise level, we actually can be manage and can be more effective and very influencing as the CFO. We're supposed to be a number 2 in the organization. So we have to do more on that. So the top page, as you've been through a lot, I think globally, as well as Cambodia specifically, which we never experienced before around uncertainty, refer like COVID situation, the pandemic. If a real example for myself, there's a lot of uncertainty where the transition from before 2008 till 2009 cut over, that a lot of uncertainty and also chaos as well. So it linked to an overall situation, which is we are economics right now. It's a little bit bumpy. So what I actually try to put in the slide here into 4 categories, but of course they're very general. I think some of the CFO and the business had actually been very well aware of already, but who actually don't really have the experience, actually you can listen and you can ask more if you have any question further. But firstly, I want to focus on, okay, during the uncertainty situation or chaos situation, as the CFO, basically, we have to be prepared or participate or aware what would be our next. Basically, we have to have the business strategy plan or contingency plan with a very strategic scenario. What I'm trying to see here with the business contingency, you know very well. So the business contingency, you actually have to have plan out uncertainty. You have to factor different scenario. Kind of the pandemic, kind of the key role staff has been, let's say 10 or 100 people has been resigned, or the business disruption, or supply chain has been cut off of what we need to be done, right? So basically on, but more on what need to be done in order to run our day-to-day job, how we actually make our staff come to work, or how we actually make our staff be able to work remotely without any issue, still fulfill the regulatory requirement for bank. Actually it's quite tough because we have to fulfill all the daily regulation to the NBC. We have a few of other staff. If we happen to have a group report, we still have a group report have to be delivered because other countries is still not locked down, and Cambodia is still locked down. It's something they have to prepare for. So basically we have to prepare for the critical stuff. And what if the critical staff is getting sick or is unable to work, or similar my case, internet is not working, who actually can help in order to get that, right? So basically we have to have that in place. Also the alternate plan as well. Everything is locked down like the bank, you know. You can see that very cut off. It is kind of by day one you open, oh, the stuff cannot work. What should we do? So everyone in red zone cannot be crossed. What need to be done? So there's a lot of challenging what need to be discovered and stuff. So we have to be alternate side to work in the minimum staff in order they do their job, as well as support the customer to do the business as well. So that is a plan, a contingency plan, as well as we have to have a proper update to the board. Because why? Because especially for the bank or big financial institution, we need to have a very well planning, because anything go wrong, we have to face out with our reputation issue. We have to face with our regulator in the customer complaint. So therefore, we have to do a regular update to our board, see what's going on. And board actually the one that the own of the fund, they are the share of the business, and they have to know that if things happen, what they can support management. So kind of thing we need to regular update as a part of governance. And that's more specific on this contingent plan. And a little bit more on to the virtual organization, where actually I'm talking about staff be able to work remotely. It more like, you know, I understand that Cambodia, I mean, as a whole, we don't really experience to work from home, honestly. Even myself previously, even under the group, sometimes work from home, but of course, I cannot access to the core banking. It's very critical. Bank, you cannot do that. Only the email you can do. But moving like 1 year, we experience a lot. We have to end up to work differently, adapt, be agile, resilient, think what needs to be done. So we actually have switched a lot of fun from what we need to invest in order to do online business, in order to support staff can do, like everyone can access to the core banking so that they can do the job effectively as well to support the business. If customer happen, oh, I have to do a transfer, or I have to order something overseas. If they cannot access the bank, they kill us already. So which means we have no bargaining of competition at all. So we have to ensure that the online business is still work, as well as support the business, as well as support the staff as well. So something that we need to think as a finance, we should be advise more to the business or IT or committee. Okay, you start to reallocate fund and make sure that we try to invest more on the IT and technology and other support staff to do their work, as well as support the business. And the more important part, which I mentioned earlier, around risk, Mr. Darren also mentioned as well. Because one, we actually has moved to a digital era. One, everyone is moving remotely, which means that we have to tolerate with the technology and security. So which means this is the risk that can be happen as well. And for the bank, we face a lot, and we actually has advised a lot to our customer as well, especially finance for our financial, and especially who actually in charge AP. There will be a lot of security cybercrime, or because security cyber security. So which means that those cybercrime actually try to attack us through an email. They try to replicate. They just use the same name or the supplier asking for the money, and then instruct you make a payment. The staff because they really cannot see the detail of like, let's say the real name, but add like add dot something like that, or even the Swift code or whatsoever. They just change a little bit, and you don't notice it. And the bank haven't really go through the detail be happen, and so we end up to make law. So as a bank, we also make law, like to share responsibility to the supplier, to the customer, and the customer end up to make loss as well. And something very important, where we actually have to have a proper control on the IT security to ensure on the cybercrime, and also they call information security. I think this one, I'm not sure if many organizations have been informed, but for the bank, we actually inform and do the testing stuff very regularly, where we actually, everyone working from home, they actually can access to the core system. They also can access to others' information as well. And sometimes they breach of the customer confidentiality or privacy, or even take all the internal control or whatever that the company have into their folder or something. And is something that actually we believe that it should be the company collateral or company policy. It shouldn't be so. As a finance, we have to make sure those like information security also has been enforced as well, which means that we work as a team with the IT to make sure, because if things happen, anything can be translated to our loss, internal control, the fraud, and also linked to the fraud as well. So in this situation, it's very chaotic. Everyone is just sick of whatever happened in the outside, in fact, here and there. And so emotionally and financially, they also feel pressure. So like it or not, they are also, if the internal control is loosened, so which means that the opportunities they're gonna be looking for and get some of whatever company should ensure on the internal control. We have to have a proper control. Even we try to narrow our security, how to say, they call the authority to spend, or my organization, they call DOA, discussion of expense, or something like that, authority, which means that we used to allow people to spend up to 200K. So now it has to be 10K or whatsoever, and every channel has to speak or central managed by finance or AP or somebody actually very experienced to monitor the expense. So to reduce the internal fraud that might be happen. And the more last on the liquidity is around the liquidity. So I think it depends from organization. If you merchandise, you probably have to rely on your AP and AR. So which means I think in this situation, AR is not good. Which one of my friends also complaining that, okay, the aging has been increased significantly. If things going to be happen like that, there will be a liquidity issue. I agree with them, because everyone's there for own survival, and the lockdown, not everyone actually can manage or order that their AR, they have to pay, and AP have to be returned as well. If you don't have cash inflow, you cannot manage cash outflow either, given the fact that you have to pay the salary for the staff, you also have to pay for the renting as well. So which means that during the uncertainty, from my experience, liquidity is very important, and the most important to keep the business for survival and sustainability. So for the bank, we have to manage, we have those like liquidity ratio. So we have to manage at least above 100%. So which means in the next 30 days, you have enough cash to fulfill. If things go wrong, let's say if somebody show up for deposit, if you have enough to pay them, it's something you have to be clear on that. So you have to cover 100%. So the cash liquidity is very important. And on top of that, we don't really have to defer our AP. So if happen we may need to pay, we can pay as long as the staff be able to proceed, we can pay and from the bank. But like say for merchandise, there will be have an issue and AR as well. But generally to those like merchandise, they have to manage AR effectively, or otherwise they will be troublesome on the collection. And just another note on the another finance option, I think majority has been practiced already, where they actually have a long-term debt. They have to have that in place. So if they believe that the cash flow in the next 30 days or let's say 6 months, it continue to be locked down like that. Now it's almost 2 months, right? 2 months, 3 months. Then our cash flow will be shrink. So if we want to be honor everything to our staff by not cutting their costs or whatsoever, or even keep the business operating, we have to have at least the backup fund, either the shareholder funds, I mean the capital injection, shareholder debt, or shareholder loan or sub debt have to be in place. You have to have that, because by the time you have to have that available, so you can draw anytime in the event of emergency. So that would be my my advice if it happen to be like that, because I can see that any business, even in the longer run, they cannot survive more than 2 years. You can see globally, even big enough, they have to have scale it down, or they have to do something else differently in order to manage their sustainability. And the very last important part as well from my presentation, it's more like how you actually leading. Besides, you actually have to participate, or you have to prepare those 1, 2, 3 that I have mentioned, execute correctly from the top to the bottom, because you cannot do alone. You have to have support, especially from your staff. Your staff is actually everything for you. They're actually helping you. They actually underground to do the job for you. So it as a leader or lead through that, we have to keep them engaged. Engaged through what? Of course, you're gonna be asking them like a feedback, or kind of contact them regularly and tell them what's going on with the business, good or bad. You actually have to tell them, because you have to get them in your side, or otherwise you fail to execute all of that, right? Because in this situation, we need the supporters. We don't need someone actually just drag you down. So the supporter had to understand your goal, and everyone have to be on the same page. So clarity also very important. Keep a simple message, telling them what's going on, what we need to be done, and need their support. And also lead them with sympathetic. So which means that we cannot just say what needs to be done, but we need to hear from them as well. Because as individuals, as a human, we have the feeling, and different people have different emotion impact. So as a manager, the CFO, we have to know that our staff actually, the well-being in terms of healthy emotionally is okay. Do they need anything need to be done or not? If they need the support from us or not? If there any technology support, let's say they're unable to work from home, or they say like myself, bandwidth cannot work, I have to tell to my IT, get you guys get something for me, and then I can be able to work from home. So it's something that actually we have to understand and get clarity with the embassy, which means that everyone can be go on the same page and can execute well. And also, which I have learned from the other country, and especially with my team as well, because during the lockdown like this, I think that's a lot of things may not need to, cannot be like press them to expect them 100% to be delivered, because thing is different. So we need to prioritize and also allow them to do a self-development. So it's something around the re-upskill, or we can be they call upskill or re-upskill. Re-upskill, which upskill, which means that you have to learn more around leadership, or you have to learn on technical more, or you can participate with other sessions, which means with the manager support, they have some time or financial support or part of the training, they can participate and can be able to do the bigger role in the futures. And the other one on the reskill, which means, okay, so now I'm finance and end up with finance, I want to change my role to be like IT, so something that we also support them as well. So which means that after the COVID or post-COVID, people actually can think differently, and they can manage their career accordingly. So I think that's all from my speak for now. If Mr. Darren, anything you want to ask or anything you want to add, so please feel free. Thank you.
Thank you, Pakade, for your practical sharings and insight from a very big bank. I like the way you share on how to manage uncertainty in such a big bank. And you know, just to put in a practice, a few minutes ago, my internet connection and my electricity was off because I'm in the province now. So that's one of the uncertainty, you know. But I really love the way you share how to be certain in the uncertainty. That's very helpful in managing finance and any strategy for the company. I think it's really informative. I just want to build on and ask one specific question. You know, I'm interested on the contingency plan with various strategic business scenario that you mentioned. Per your opinion, in the circumstance of Cambodia now and in the future, how many scenarios that should be developed, and how this scenario will be executed? Thank you.
Thanks for the question. So based on my experience, and I think we have learned a lot about 1.5 years from the pandemic. So people very experienced things and around the business contingency. So if I'm just talking from the strategic aspect or forecast or business aspect, definitely people can create many scenarios. It depends on their business. Like I say, in merchandise, they probably have so many more, like from supply chain, production, and anything. If anything can be kill them and they want, right? If they keep the business going on, they have to have every scenario, and which means like people have to be in charge. Let's say supply chain, they have to in charge the supply chain. If they cannot be export or import with their material, what would they do? So they have to create that. For banks specifically, I think we actually create a couple of scenario. We call like best scenario, which is like ongoing, best blue sky scenario, or the worst scenario, depend on our economic. So, but from our practice currently, thing that would not be worse like the other from the bank sector. I'm trying to say, even though of course there will be microfinance and MFI, there will be some troublesome, but I think in overall you can see that people still make profitability on that. But of course, thing wouldn't that great in the futures, given the fact that global crisis, especially the nearby our country like Thailand, Vietnam, or
Hi, Pakade.
Also having the pandemic as well, so then try locally. So, hello, you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm like say that the disruption. So I make things out right. So let's say to will be more on for bank will be liquidity or fund management that we have to manage. So it can be anyone, can be.
Yeah, we seem to lose you again, Pakade. That's one of the uncertainties.
Draw the huge money by the ones. If the car we actually have our back, and then okay, we don't have enough money. So is it any debt or any shareholder or we call capital injection? We call.
Hello.
capital call. So basically the strategy, given the fact that if we make the case that will become to the worst scenario, right? So which means that it's something that CFO
Hi, Pakade.
Monitor the daily how much. If just that low about 10 or 20 million, we know what's going on already. So we have to squeeze everything in order to survive first. And then we go to the next and the next. But like I say, my experience is more the bank, but come to the merchandising, of course, like I say, they have to manage with the business scenario that they have to work on around supply chain, because very important, the AP and AR, and also their staff as well around our staff. I'm trying to say, because they have a fixed cost, they have to manage, right? So it's something that also have another plan for the cost management and cost saving. I don't say cost cutting, it would be very harsh because people would need finance security, but the cost management, what needs to be done. So in all the scenario, if we don't have enough liquidity, we have to squeeze it, we don't really manage it, we don't need to do like invest on more CapEx in order to manage our operating cash for time being. Some things like we have to put that in place for our business plan. So my what I'm talking right now is probably a little bit general, but I think it's the practical, and we have to do it, or otherwise by the time we have an issue, we probably too late already. So I think we have to prepare, because we don't know if things going to prolong that more than 3 months or 6 months, and what's going on. And CFO, we have to on top on this. Yeah.
So thank you, Pakade. I think once again, we thank you so much for your comprehensive and practical sharing. I think it's very, very practical, because for the Cambodia context, a lot of uncertainty. You know, in 2020, we thought we had a lot of uncertainty, and we had hope that 2021 will bring a brighter future for all of us. But it's a big difference. 2021, it's a more worse in terms of the COVID-19 issues and impact, and the uncertainty is still there and unpredictable. So I love your sharing, and I hope it's very beneficial to our folks and friends and members here. And stay tuned for the questions and answer later on. I know our participants have already a lot of questions for Pakade, which is great. And we will serve that and address that in the Q&A session later on. So next, I would like to invite our second speaker, Mr. Olivier Hubert, partner of interim CFO of Alter CFO, to walk through the second topic, break away from number by being a strategic player. Please welcome him with us. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Mr. Darrit. It's a pleasure to be received by KICPAA for this presentation. Just a quick introduction about myself. I'm a qualified CFO and professional accountant. I've been about 30 years of experience, and I work in audit, and also I was a CFO in a multinational, and work for private equity fund as well. And I've been laid off a few times because of restructuring, because of reorganization. So at the end, I've decided to create my own practice, and I founded the Alter CFO, basically providing CFO services on a B2B, and up to a certain time, I had a few partners with me, but with the COVID crisis, now unfortunately I had to lay these people, and I'm alone, but I'm still surviving. So before we get into the presentation, please can you go to the next slide? Yeah, I'd like to maybe go through some preambles. And I guess most of people are accountant or CFO, And I think it's important to, before you take any action, to think about your organization and its environment. And especially within this period, how did you manage the uncertainties over the last 12 months? How about your model, your business model? Is your model sustainable? If it's sustainable, for how long it will be sustainable? There are very practical tools, although it comes from academic, but it's very easy to use. I recommend to use some models such as PESTEL, SWOT analysis, Porter 5 force. I guess most of you knows about them. There's even an even more simple one. It's analysis in terms of generic strategy. Generic strategy is very simple. Is your company differentiation? So these are very simple questions that you may ask to yourself. You can also look at your performance yourself and do a self-assessment. As a CFO, what is the value that you are bringing to your organization? Do you bring sufficient value? Do you meet your own expectation? Do you meet your BOD or CEO expectation? Do you meet your team expectation? So these are questions that you need to ask yourself. Were you able to stabilize the business over the last few months? Were you able to position it for recovery? Again, ask yourself of this question. And from there, you may derive a gap analysis. Basically, what is where you are and where would you like to be? And maybe assess whether you need more support, you need more resources, you need more capabilities. From there, you'll be able to fill these gaps, set goals, motivate your team, engage the people you are working with, and go for it. Please, can you go to the next slide? So we'll talk about the crisis, the top priority. Although there is some positive sign of recovery in the US, you can see the stock market, Nasdaq or Dow Jones, quite performing very well, and more than 100 million people have been vaccinated in the US, and so we have a feeling that the economy is picking up again. I guess Europe still lagging behind a little bit, but we have also some positive sign of recovery. I would be more concerned about our region, and I'm based in Vietnam. Used to work very frequently in Cambodia as well, but I'd be more prudent about our region. And what's happening now in Cambodia is also happening in Vietnam. We had a few cases recently, and they're starting to be very strict on people location and so on. So as I said, cash is not only king, but is also critical for survival. And so what about 2022? I think we still have to address this crisis and stabilize the business for survival. So how do we stabilize this business? Okay, there's things which are very, very important about cash. And when I say cash, is to have a culture of cash in the company. A culture is beyond process. Okay, it's all about immaterial things. It's about attitude, people's attitude, people behavior, the value of the company, the judgment people are making. So these are important. So the idea is you have to change people's mindset. They have to think about cash as crucial, as a key point for survival of the business. Process is not sufficient. We need more than that. We need people skills. We need soft skills. we need to inspire people to really be focused on the cash. By being focused on the culture and changing people's mindset, I guess people will be more receptive. They have a better understanding of their role, and so their contribution to this cash optimization will certainly more efficient. In addition, build resilience. This is very, very important thing. To build up resilience, you have to track liquidity. Liquidity must be an obsession. That's very, very important. You need to be obsessed with your cash. This is something, it's like looking at your watch. You need to look at your cash permanently. Very, very important. And so in terms of management, you have to develop some scenario according to the COVID spread, the amplitude of the COVID, the duration, the potential duration. And it's very, very important that you communicate with everybody from the top to the bottom of the company, so everybody understand where we are, what we are doing. And finally, you have to allocate your capital to high priority. Please, can you go to the next one? Okay, so talking about things that we can do to stabilize the business and with practical things. So first, I would say you can look at your receivable. So factoring your receivable and review the term of receivable. When I say factoring is basically you can sell your receivable to a third party or to a financial institution. Basically, this is getting financing against your receivable. Okay. You can also, of course, work on your collection, put more effort on the collection, because within this crisis, your client will also may face some difficulty. So you probably have to put more effort on collection. Inventory, of course, if you can reduce your inventory is a good approach. Inventory costs money. You have to mobilize cash for acquiring inventory. So try to reduce as much as you can. But of course, you have to arbitrate and not to paralyze the business. You still need some inventory. Review that your trade and non-payable term. Working with supplier. Also, when I say non-trade payable, you may have to work with the GDT and maybe try to get some delay in payment of tax if you can. There's always a way you can explain your situation. There's also other way is that to look at your debt with your bank. Try to get some waiver on the covenants. Covenants are the terms in the loan agreement that the bank impose on you. You may have you may try to get some waiver or ease them, because sometimes covenants put a lot of pressure on you. There's also option to consider refinancing. You may try to seek finance from your shareholder. This is one option. Or also maybe try to get, for instance, convertible loan. So there's less pressure on interest payment and so on. So that's a way to maybe get some kind of facility. You can also look at potential divestiture. If you balance sheet, you have some non-productive assets which does not bring revenue but have value. You have a non-core activity which basically are not related to your core business. You may consider to divest, so you can get cash against those assets that you are disposing, and you can finance your core business. There's also option that you can consider is the sell leaseback. Let's say, for instance, I have a client who is having a retail business, and is owing a few property from which is operating his retail, and so he decided to sell one or two of his property to get finance and finance his operation. Inversely, if you have a strong balance sheet, it's also a good time to do M&A, because valuation tend to be a bit lower, and it's proven that it's within crisis that companies who are performing systematically and programmatically M&A will recover faster. It's like investing. If you look at the guru in investment, they will always recommend to buy share in the bearish market as opposed to a bullish market. So when the market is down, is the right time to buy the stock. So M&A is a bit the same. Please.
Hi.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, sir. If I might interrupt you, I think that's very interesting point. Thanks for the practical sharing how to stabilize the business during challenging time. It's a part of the what's so-called a survival strategy. You know, whether or not you have a good survival strategy ready to implement. I think it is critical for CFO and finance professionals, and I'm interested on this point that you made, strengthening the balance sheet. Some issue that you pointed out here is a list. Some of them are under our control. Some of them are not under our control. So just to build on that, how, can you share some practical strategies or tips on how to execute this successfully? Thank you.
Okay. You say things are under our control and things that are not under our control. And first, what I would like to say is you are CFO, and CFO is a very, very important position, and it's crucial for the organization. And so I would say things you do not have control, you should try to get control of it. And how to get control of it is you have to get your board, your CEO around the table, because you know the numbers, you understand the situation, and provided that you have explored all other options. The simple one is the receivable, the payable. Once you have explored that and that you've maximized it, and that you need to consider disposal of assets, you need to consider shareholder loan. It's very important you put everybody around the table and you explain and you involve them. And again, a CFO, there's a lot of negotiation. I mean, it's not a simple job. You need to convince people. You have to make your points. As I said, it's important that you get control and convince your owners or your board, and that's the best solution for the company. I hope I can answer to that.
Yeah, very well. Thank you. Continue, please.
Okay, please, can you go to the next one? So we've seen at the balance sheet level, the other thing is that scenarios, and I think Ms. Pakade before mentioned the necessary to forecast yourself. I've just developed again. So it's very important that you develop a few scenarios that encompass multiple eventualities. And in those scenarios, I would recommend that you define clear threshold or trigger points. What are these? These are basically moments or key timing when you're going to decide to kick off with your action plan. So, for instance, typical threshold is when your cash reach a minimum threshold, then you decide to take some action. That's an example, but you may have other threshold that you have identified. Also, it's very important that you factor macro and company specific data in your forecast, and all these risks which are related, and define some KPI and impact on those KPI. And the main one I have in mind is revenue, is EBITDA, and also the net profit and the cash flow. So all this, how this will impact on your financial performance. You also, I think, need to take into consideration supply chain disruption and employee dislocation. Some industry may not be able any longer to reach supply, or also the cost of transportation. We've seen the cost of transportation for over recently increase, and because of this increase of transportation, some company decided not to import anymore. They'd rather stop because they cannot produce with profitable activity any longer. So this is something you need to factor in. On the demand, you need to also factor get the information from your sales and see what's the impact on demand. And when I talk about employee dislocation, it happens that because of the lockdown and so on, people may have difficulty to reach their workplace, so you have to factor that as well. One thing which is very, very important in all this period is the role of the financial planning. This is very, very important. And in normal time, from my experience, is we used to do a forecast and reforecast, let's say twice a year, after the first trimester, and then you do a reforecast, and by August you work on your budget. But now it's different. You have to accelerate the frequency of those forecasting and planning. And I would say roll over your forecast, and every month in this crisis is very, very important. As a result, you cannot accept latency. Latency means you cannot delay the process because you are in survival mode. So it's very, very important that you get real-time information. But for this, you need to build a framework. This is very important. When I say framework, you need to involve all your managers in the organization, from supply to demand. So anybody need to participate. I think the people who are on the supply, they know better than the financing what's going on, the potential increase on the pricing, the shortage of supply, and so on. So they can really provide insight information. On the demand side, the salespeople will provide also insightful information. So it's very important to put all these people around the table to be able to provide accurate forecasting. And also, it's not only a matter of people, but it's also a matter of tools. And it's very important as we work remotely to get a collaborative tools. Example is you have Dropbox, you have all these Googles and Microsoft Teams and Zoom. So it's very important that we can use that. So very important that as a CFO, you lead all this process. And by leading them, by motivating people, encouraging people, they will understand better what they have to do and how they can really cope with this difficult situation. Please, can you go to the next slide? So after balance sheet, I would say that one thing is important is the productivity. You have to assess your low productive area. How to assess, to measure the outputs versus the inputs all along the chain value. This is a good way to reduce cost. And I take some example of some of my clients that they've done the exercise and identify some very low productive area, and from them they took some action. For instance, they had a lot of surface of office. They decided to sublet part of their office space to get some cash, or factories that have decided to rent some of their machines as well. They didn't use some of their machines, so they've rent their machine. Also, they rent the whole factory for a certain period, for a week. They rent the full premises to a producer to use their machine. Also, I have a client, for instance, that he based on his he had some rental. He paid a huge amount of rental, but because of the reduction of sales, he tried to involve the owners of all the premises, all the real estate, and try to negotiate a lower rental based on these revenues. So he associates the owners, the landlord, to the result of the company. So that's a way to take action on low productive area. You also have to look at the operating cost and try to minimize to get to reduce them as possible. But don't forget, you need to keep some flexibility and get ready for the recovery. One example I would take is I work with a consulting firm, and they really record a very down shortfall of business, and they did not lay out people, but what they did, in fact, they try to reduce the number of hours and say, you guys, I cannot hire you more 100% any longer, but it would be good that you reduce your time, so if you can work 40-50% until the business is getting better. So basically the idea is you keep your resource, because the day the business recover, you need this resource. And we all know that training people, having new staff costs a lot of money, takes a lot of time. So it's very important that you keep your people on board and find a way to go through this crisis. You can also adapt to, sorry, there's a typo. It's not demand, is adapt to the offer of your existing clients. They may face some difficulty, so they may require lower quantity or less sophisticated products or services. So you have to adapt to this. Something you can also consider is to reallocate resource to high revenue stream where there's a better outcome and sales, for instance. You can also consider to use alternative sales and other delivery channels. The most usual is the e-commerce. Use e-commerce as another channel. And so I was speaking about e-commerce. Very important to promote this, to bolster this productivity, is to use and promote digital transformation. So please go to the next slide. Yeah, I'm not myself an IT person, but I think that IT and digital transformation is very, very important nowadays. And I believe that CFO people can play a very, very important role in this digital transformation. One of the key reasons why is because as a CFO, basically in charge of internal control and all this system, the system will produce the data. You have the best visibility on the data flow. So you probably you are the person to make this decision. In addition to that, you as a CFO, again, you are the one to better understand the data and how data is produced and how to access access this data. Moreover, you can assess the risk. You can identify the loophole in the organization, and you can also anticipate the consequences of this risk and loophole. So it's very important that you do that, as you are the right person, I still believe. Also, you are the person in charge of the managing the cash, and you have the capital allocation responsibility. So you'll probably be the best person as the person in charge of cash budget to take the leadership. And from your strategic approach as well, you probably be the right person as well to arbitrate between IT request and also the best business performance. So you will be, I mean by that you will be able to align and match the technology with the business requirements. Finally, as a CFO holding a very important position, you can influence people at every level. You can be here by people, and you can basically inspire people while promoting change, and also in the right position to help people to get a transformation mindset. Please, can you get to the new one? So some tips in terms of digital transformation. It's I would say very important to listen to key manager. You need to put everybody around the table to listen to them, see their requirements, the difficulty that they are facing, take this into consideration. Also identify the loopholes in the finance, but also across all the organization. It's very important that you think beyond finance, and you break down the traditional role between IT and finance. Sometimes finance and IT, they have different view, but you need to be on top of that. It's very, very important. And create a project management environment. Also, this is an experience that I would like to share. It's very, very important to have a selection when you decide to implement IT, a committee to select the right application, and also for the implementation, and that you involve all stakeholders. It's very, very important that everybody is around the table. I've creation of committee, implementation committee is a really good tools, and having the supplier on board is also a right approach, because you can manage calendar, schedule, you can formalize the progress and measure the performance of the committee. Also arbitrates the difference among people, and finally have a constructive approach to find solution. Of course, you need to involve CEO and board in that. They may not attend all your meetings, but at least they need to be involved, know what's going on, because at the end they decide the financial decision, and by being involved, it's more easy for them to decide and press the button for the financing. It's also important that you get the right skills during this period. Attract digital people. We have with the right skills in IT. It's something I've noticed. Recently, I was having a client, and they are in a transformation, and it was more easy to find. Unfortunately, there's people who are looking for work. But I take, for example, the hospitality industry. They are very, very good people with IT, finance, who are working in the hospitality, who now are looking for work, and they can offer their skills. And so this company, my client, makes some very good recruitment of former hospitality executive. So please go to the next one. So very important in your IT implementation is to have a 360-degree approach, and also don't let to happen for finance to happen in the last moment. Finance needs to be a priority. It's very, very important. Why a priority? Because ultimately all information is going into the finance. Everything flows to the back office, to the accounting, and so it's crucial to take that in consideration. So and I would just take an example of why you need to consider finance at least equal to the other modules. I have a few clients who decided to implement ERP or CRM modules, and basically did not really consider the finance, but focus first on the front office of the operation, and both solution, but did not consider finance. And what did happen in fact is that when they acquired this solution, there was no integration with the finance, and they end up doing all the reconciliation and the integration manually. So CEO did not understand why the company needed 10 accountants to do the bridge, and so I had to explain them that if you don't have integration, all the revenue recognition need to go through few steps instead of going directly to the back office. So that's something you need really to consider as well. Finally, don't stand still. It means that the biggest risk that you face is doing nothing. If you don't digitalize your process, you may be in difficulty in a later stage, because your competitor will adopt a technology, and by adopting this technology, they will be more efficient, they will be more user friendly, and they will get your clients. So this is very important. So you'll be likely to be left behind, and as a CFO, you will bear the consequence of inaction. Please, can you go to the next one? So just as a conclusion of this presentation, again, in all your action, you are not alone, and it's very important that you involve your top management. Have a top-down, bottom-up approach. It's crucial. Also, you need to build a team spirit. You have to energize people. You need to make sure that interest of everybody is aligned. Everybody goes into the right direction, and it's very, very important to be transparent. Also, try as much as possible to share the decision-making process. It's very important to have a collaborative approach. Having everybody around at the table and getting people to participate to the decision will be probably less stressful for you as a CFO when the decisions are shared among a few people. Finally, you really need to empower people and give them, in their space, give them authority to make decisions, of course, within their limit. To conclude, what I would say is that as a CFO, of course, your technical skills are important, but when you reach this level, the leadership skills are very, very important, and your brand, your name can make the difference. Who you are, your background, your experience, because at this level, as the level of CFO, you will have multiple interaction, and not only in the company, but interaction with other people in your community, and the person you know would be very important. Just to get advice on how to approach this uncertainty, talking to experts, talking to peer executive or industry leader. I mean, your name will enable to reach and get advice from these people. Your professional network also very, very important. Being part of a professional organization such as, I mean, KICPAA, of course. I also think about organizations such as CFO Cambodia, and so sharing with peer people is very important, because you can get a lot of benefit and ideas and support to go through this difficulty. Above all, just to conclude, this is my last word, but to go through all this and implement all this, the more important thing, I think, is basically you have to believe in yourself. That's, I think, if you believe in yourself and make your points and convince others that you are taking the right action. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Oliver, for your practical sharing. It's very informative. I think we are running out a little bit of time, so let's quickly start with our next sessions. Before we start for our third topic, we have a pool questions, which is an exciting icebreaker initiated by Sarah. Thank you. We have around 3 to 4 questions for all of you to participate, and each question is allowed to have 1 minute to respond. Technical team, please run the pool question now. Okay, good. So I encourage all of our participants to click the respond and submit as soon as possible. And we will conclude it in 3 minutes. Please, I encourage all of you to participate, because we will be using our poll result for the rest of our time during this webinar. Thank you. Yeah, we have 2 more minutes left. Please quickly participate. There's no right or wrong question here, okay? We just encourage you to actively participate and take away a lot of practical tips. So please. Yeah, we have more and more people submitted. Please. We have 1 minute and 20 seconds left. Wow, we have more and more submission now. Very good. 1 last minute, please. Use your time. And the result of the poll is very important for our next speaker, as well as during our Q&A sessions. "30 seconds left." Well, the good news is we have more than 50% of the participants participated, which is great. Oh, 61%. Nice. Okay, so I think it's time. Tim, please end the pool and show the result. Wow, look at that. Very impressive result. Okay, so we will be talking about the result throughout our course of the webinar today. So let me invite our third speaker, Mr. Sarat Martin, Regional Consultant, ACCA, to walk you through the third topic, Accountant of the Future, preparing for decades of 2020s. Please welcome him with us. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you, Darit. Can I just confirm that you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Very good. Thank you. So I think there was some very interesting poll results that we just saw in this presentation. So I want to start by actually congratulating KICPAA on this conference and picking such, in my mind, a very relevant team on the top priorities for CFOs. And may I say, it's not just CFOs, but I think it's for the whole profession for 2022 and beyond. I think this reflects the kind of strategic thinking and foresight that we want our finance professionals to have at a time when we are dealing with such long-term structural and talent issues in the profession. So on behalf of ACCA, I want to thank KICPAA for inviting us to present our findings, our perspectives on where we see the profession heading. Over the next few slides, I am an accountant. I like numbers. And so I'm going to present to you a lot of data-heavy numbers here for you to maybe take in and absorb. And to use, let me also remember something that I learned from the first Cambodian conference that I attended in December 2019, where the Deputy Prime Minister, I believe, urged the delegates to listen to the presenters and in his Cambodian expression or Khmer expression, learn enough so that you can kill the teacher at the end. So, I'm prepared for that. I have bought my insurance in the form of Pakade and Olivier. So please go ahead and kill us during the panel session. So the chart that you see before us was something that we did in ACCA very soon after the pandemic broke out. It was in March last year. And what you can see, if you look at the bar towards the left, and just to help you understand this, the colors on the red refer to Asia Pacific respondents. The gray bars are global. And it's a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the highest. And clearly you can see that uncertainty is a huge problem that is facing the profession. I would say that at that point in time, the profession, the accountants did not know how to respond to this from a business standpoint. You've heard Pakade and in fact even Olivier speak about some of these things that they have observed and learned through this period, and they've shared that with you. And from your own poll question, I thought it was very interesting that when we speak of what's going to happen after vaccination, it's a very, very strong split between those who think that life will go on to normal and those who recognize that we've got some big problems and the vaccination may not be able to allow us to get back to normal. This, in my view, is not a pessimistic view, but rather one which is based on the whole year that we have been through this COVID. And when we first started, this was a problem which started in China and spread a little bit in ASEAN. And now as we end it, it is the US, not end it, sorry. Now is where we are is the US and UK, which have the highest numbers. Who would have thought that? And today we're already dealing with variants and mutations of this virus, which may or may not affect the ability of the vaccines to handle this. That will have implications for our business model. So as accountants and finance professionals, I think we have no choice. We have to make sense of our future operating environment of our business. We have to look at our business models and ask ourselves what's possible, what's not, what needs to change. You know, Olivier touched on that, Pakade touched on that. And I would also say, how will this impact our customers? We have to be really paying attention to that, our suppliers, and also the communities. And I see from some of the questions that I have asked, in fact, even our people. How will this impact our people? How do we need to respond to our people's needs during this pandemic? Just to share with you an example, I am based in Malaysia. We are now facing the third round of COVID outbreak. We have got more than 400,000 people who have confirmed cases, and you compare that in Cambodia, where you, if I'm not mistaken, have something like 15 to 16,000. But your vaccination rate is somewhere, I think, in excess of 1 million. And in Malaysia, our vaccination rate is less than 500,000. So, you know, we clearly have huge differences in the way we are managing these things. And that's going to affect the supply chain. And whenever that affects the supply chain, it affects us in many ways. So, and you can see from the remaining charts here that the one way in which we need to handle uncertainty is to have better analytics over the future. And I'll touch a little bit about that. If we can go to the next slide, please. Right. So this is another piece of survey that we did with Ernst & Young. We did it in July. So again, all of the research that I'm sharing with you was done after COVID hit us. So it's none of this is irrelevant from the standpoint that, you know, this was something that was done pre-COVID. So in July, we asked people, what was your level of digital and technology adoption? And we found that about 27% of our respondents were doing some form of technology. Most of them were in fact in areas like social media, community technologies, you know, collaboration technologies. Again, I believe it was Olivia, he mentioned about Google Docs, Dropbox, things like that. Now, as we start to look at this, you will also see that this spider diagram has two colors. One is the red for leaders, and the blue is the overall total. And what you can see is clearly the leaders are separating themselves in the way they're using technology in their business. And, you know, again, as you look at this, you yourself can ask, where's your organization in relation to this? And I speak to you not just as people who are from corporate backgrounds, but also people who are from public accounting firms, tax firms, etc., or advisory firms, because it is only through you that your clients can get to these sort of technologies. So you need to be able to play in this technology space as well. Let me call out that little area on the top right, which is data management, because this is the area where it involves data analytics. And this is an important area which I would suggest that we all start to look at a bit closely. And I have a further few charts to share with you. But before that, this is current state. So remember this number, this is 27% in Asia Pacific. The number for global is 25%. So Asia Pacific is slightly ahead, but not by much. Next slide. Now, this is where I've put it in very big fonts because I want us to pause and think about it. Considering where we are, we then asked, where do you expect to be over this whole decade? And you can see that now almost 9 out of 10 of our respondents say that they will be much further along the journey on digital adoption. And if that is the case, then we need to ask ourselves, in whichever organization we're with now, what do we want to be at? What do our organizations want to be at the end of the 2020s? So towards 2030, what is our organization going to be like? So I'll ask you to think about that because this is an important aspect that we need to start thinking about. Now, some of you may challenge me and say, Sharath, you know, with all of this pandemic, you know, people like Pakade and Olivier have said that we have to manage cash flow tightly. We are faced with survival. We don't have cash to invest. So can you bring up the next slide, please? And I'll talk a bit about that. Right. So we asked them, given what's happening with COVID-19, will there be a scaling back of technology adoption? And yes, you're right. Today, a lot of them are saying, well, about 45% or so are saying, yes, there will be a cash flow problem and we may not be able to invest. But just look at the chart on the right, the bars on the right, and over the next 5 years, the people who expect to still have a problem with technology adoption has gone down to about 15%. Again, this is significant because it means 85% are going to move on with life and going to be, making sure that they are adopting technology to use for the front end of the business. Right? So this is, I thought, an important consideration to share with you. And if we look at what are the kinds of technologies that people are using today, I wanted to share the next slide with you. Again, some of this people, will say, I'm not surprised, but it was still surprising to me as someone who's been in the profession for more than 20 over years, in fact, more than 25 years. I'm still surprised at where we are in terms of the use of technology. So can we bring up the next slide, please? Right. So in terms of what are the technologies that finance teams are using, not just the business, but finance teams now, I found it surprising that Excel is still the top rated use around, which is Excel in Asia Pacific as well as in global, 81%. Now, why am I surprised? Because not just in Cambodia, but I think globally in Asia Pacific, people have been talking about data, analytics, cloud computing for over 10 years. And if we're still using Excel as our topmost solution in the finance team, then I think we've got a problem. Let me make this quite clear. I think this is a huge issue. The other thing I will say is that analytics matters for your competitive advantage. Again, I will reference something that Olivier shared about, using pestle models, SWOT models. Some of them you can do from a qualitative perspective, but some of them you really need to understand from a quantitative perspective. What kind of market share your competitors are having, what kind of market share in the products and services for you, etc. So this is, I think, something for us to bear in mind and consider what we are going to do with this, right? I would also just move down. So data visualization, the sort of bar just immediately before Excel, refers to things like Power BI, Tableau, which are more sophisticated technologies which are cloud-based, which help us on analytics. And the idea is really for finance professionals, what we are seeing throughout, and particularly in Asia, is that we need to free up our time doing routine, mundane, repetitive work in order to do and use more of our time on analytics. So if you're going to still use manual things like Excel, we will have a challenge, right? And the other thing that you will find, as all of us who use Excel will know, typically this works only on historical data. And most of the time we are very comfortable using it for financial data. Some, of course, use it for non-financial data, which is good, but they are largely historical data, right? And I see some questions from Sunto and the rest on different types of technology. Can I deal with that towards the end? Yeah. Now, can I move to the next slide, please? Right. So I want to present that, basically when we speak of analytics, there are about 4 broad categories of analytics, what we call the 2 Ds and the 2 Ps. So the 2 Ds are descriptive and diagnostic, which looks at your past performance, historical data, whereas predictive and prescriptive, in fact, looks towards the future. Again, whether you use finance data or not, is not the point. You can use finance data as well as operational data. The more conservative-minded finance leaders will be still using finance data. the more progressive leaders will be using finance and operational data. So this is where we need to be asking ourselves, where do we want to be, not just now in the next few years, but prepare a plan and visualize where you and your organization will be by the end of this decade. In this survey that we did, which was actually with the Chartered Accountants of Australia and New Zealand, we found that over 70% of respondents were still using descriptive analytics. And when we start looking at predictive, then that number drops to just over 40%. So we clearly need to do a lot more. And I'm going to connect this with what we saw earlier from the poll, because quite a number, I think, were also in the descriptive bucket and not a lot in the predictive. Let me pause also in saying two things. One, analytics has a clear role to play in your competitive advantage, right? I think we know that, and it's a question of how well are we going to use that. All throughout, I have been showing you the difference between Asia Pacific and global. And while Asia Pacific is slightly ahead, it's not a lot. And I'm going to make a bold statement here, if I may, which is, if we keep talking about the rise of Asia, which not just me, but many others have come before me and have spoken about this whole rise of Asia, it cannot be based on the fact that our population sizes are what is the difference, and that's what's driving growth. We have to have our own competitive advantage. To do that, we have to be far better at using technology, at using analytical capabilities to give us that value enhancement, that value creation that we really need. So that's an important point I hope you will bear in mind and consider in your own organization. I want to end with, all of this could sound a bit misplaced, because, all of countries are going through different stages of our digital journey. But in the next slide, if you could bring that up, please. This is what I observed very recently. One of the articles is from, I think both of them, or three of them are from the Khmer Times very recently. And you can see that the banks and microfinance association are encouraging people to pay electronically. Mainly this is because of COVID, to minimize the handling of physical notes, right, and the spread of the virus. So the driver, the impetus for digital adoption, in fact, is coming from various places. There's another super app, and I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. I think it's called Niam24. And they are also talking about the fact that cashless payments have recently overtook physical transactions for the first time. And this is in April. So this is an underlying trend that you're beginning to see. I will say this: if your customers are changing, then your marketing teams, your product and services development teams will need to change to address this greater digital adoption. And if your marketing and frontline teams are changing, then finance teams need to also be changing in the way we are supporting the business, in the way we are doing analytics. And I hope that, if I come back and do a presentation to KICPAA in 2030, we won't be talking about Excel so much, right? Now, can I move to the next slide, please? Right. Now, with that, I want to switch gears, because essentially you can see from here that there are only two main issues which I think are going to occupy us accountants for this whole decade. The first is digital transformation, and the second is sustainability. And that's why I asked that poll question to see, of the sustainable development goals, which are the ones that you all felt were, resonated the strongest with you. And I could see that I think it was quality education which came up, which is fair. Climate change didn't come up very high, did it? And I think that's an important factor to also just reflect on, because whether this is going to be relevant in Cambodia, climate change is going to be relevant throughout the world. I would say many people are unconvinced Many people also feel that too much is made of climate change. To them, I would say, perhaps it's the way the science of climate change is being explained. Perhaps it's the way we are not seeing the evidence of these events on climate change happening. And thank God, because if we are already seeing these impacts, it is not going to be something that we can reverse anytime soon. But I would also say pay attention to the science of climate change, speak to the experts. Today, if you have Netflix, you can even watch some shows on Netflix about climate change. But there are wonderful reports, websites on this. The UN Sustainable Development Goals have some excellent data and facts based on this. And you can see from here that this is the International Energy Association, which is already saying that CO2 emissions is expected to rise in 2021. So this looks like a reversal of all that we are trying to do. Last year, despite all the standstill in our economies, in our lives, the CO2 emissions only dropped by about 7%. That's not a lot. In fact, if you ask me, by 2030, we will not be on track with the Sustainable Development Goals and the climate change of 2 degrees. There's one more thing I want to talk about, which is this whole 2 degrees global warming scenario that you sometimes hear. And I want to sort of maybe talk to you as accountants and say, it's not about the fact that the temperature will rise by 2 degrees and the world get warmer and we need to wear different types of clothes so that we're not sweating so much, right? It's the fact that we are going to see this affect, all across from the food chains onwards. It's going to affect the quality of food. It's going to affect the crop productivity. It's going to affect irrigation and water sources. It's going to affect the the shelf life of products that are coming out. And these things then affect those who are in the FMCG area, who are using, food products. And there are many, many ways. The other day I was talking to a CFO who is from a spectacles company. They produce spectacles. And she thought that, in her company, they were okay from this whole idea of climate change because it was only electricity in their shops. They were using very little water and they were using some paper, which she says maybe we can reduce. But it's not about that because spectacles are made from plastics and sometimes glass. Where do these things come from? Plastics come from fossil fuels, right? It's a derivative of oil and gas products. So we can't just look at our small little business and say my supply chain is okay. If it's coming from suppliers and the suppliers of those suppliers, which are using things which are coming and affecting the environment, we will still have a problem. Now, you don't have to take my word for it because I've included in my slide deck a couple of other very notable people who are calling the profession to make some change. But before that, I want to touch on another piece of research that we did in the next slide. Right. In this research, again, we asked the question, post-COVID, how much do you think your organization needs to change? In 2 areas. The bottom one is on environment. And I'll just let you have a look at this because the ones in red is where we need significant change. The ones in orange are where some change is required. So if you look at total change, it's the combination of the red and orange. And when we look at the environment, it seems to be higher than what we are talking about above in terms of social inequalities. But hang on a minute, right? Because if you just look at where significant change is required, accountants, and so I want you to pause and understand that accountants whose life is often dictated by numbers are saying that we need to be concerned with more than just numbers. And I am totally in agreement with this because today, when we talk about social inequalities, it's not just income and wealth inequalities, which affects your customers, which affects the kinds of products and services that you will use. but also, and this touches on something that you all mentioned in the poll, quality education. Today, across the world, we are having education inequality and education divide. Particularly for those who have some form of technology, their children can probably study. Those without are having a big issue. And so I want you to think forward. If these are children in primary school, they go on to secondary, that lag effect is still there. From secondary, they go on to tertiary in the university level, that lag effect is still there. Those who are in universities now are also affected, because I know many universities which couldn't keep up with this whole teaching online business. They're still struggling with it. So even university students are having their lives impacted. This is an important issue. And finally, and I don't think we need to mention this to you all because you're also aware of this, but it's something that resonates very strongly with me, is we also have a vaccine divide. Because clearly we can see that there are more vaccine doses available to countries in the West than there are available to countries here. And there are many issues to that. But underlying it is the fact that our road to recovery is going to be much slower and much more impacted than other countries which have these doses. So there are social inequality issues there. And as an accountant, we have got no choice but to understand these macro issues, how they will not just affect our business, but the industry, how they will affect our country, because all of these are interlinked, right? So I hope that helps you to think through about these issues. If I can just move to the next slide. This is finally one piece of research which didn't come from ACCA. This comes from a public relations company called Edelman. It's a global firm. And if you see here, they're talking about CEOs. And they're saying that the expectation is that CEOs need to do more. They need to do more on these social issues, on the pandemic issues. They need to, look at the bottom one, they need to do more even when the government is lagging. Why am I raising this if this is CEOs? Because behind the CEO is the CFO. And if the CFO's agenda is not aligned with the CEO, then I'm not sure what the CFO is doing, right? So our CFOs, and if you are in professional practice firms, you need to support your clients, your CFOs, your client CEOs with this agenda as well. The next slide, please. So finally, I spoke about, the people who, are far more notable than someone from like me, who are calling for accountants to pick up this challenge. On the left, you have Mark Carney, who used to be the former Bank of England governor. He used to also head a task force called the Financial Stability Board. And that was a coalition of all the central bankers. And he very recently has said that the accounting profession needs to take up this fight against climate change. The gentleman in the middle, handsome gentleman, is also a Dutch person. He used to be the CEO of a Dutch logistics company. In fact, he was also the CFO. And he's now the president of this organization called the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. He is a gentleman who said as far back as 2012, if I'm not mistaken, that accountants have a role to play to save the world. Finally, on the right, someone that even if you're not familiar with his face, you would have heard of integrated reporting. And so here's the guy who popularized integrated reporting, Mervyn King, who made a very similar statement about accountants saving the planet. So this is very, very fundamental. And if we think that accountants don't have a role to play here, we need to think again, because clearly this is going to impact our business ecosystems in time to come, definitely by this decade. And I want to end with the last slide, which is around bringing it all together. I spoke of digital transformation. I spoke of sustainability. How do we then look at this in terms of the strategic skill sets that we need as finance professionals? Can I move to the next slide, please? And this is my last slide, I promise. Now here, and I speak to you now, whether you are a manager in a professional service firm, accounting firm, tax and advisory firm, or whether you are a CFO, this will still apply. And depending on where you are, I would ask you to look at this chart in terms of your years of experience, and you will see how the evolution of your skills and experience and capabilities will need to change. Let me pick on a few, right? So if you take something that we all grown up studying, which is the accountancy technical bits, the standards, the audit standards, the technical stuff, that is that lighter gray, and which is the first line to drop. So, you might start off needing to be, pretty strong on this, but after you find, in the first 10 years, it starts to, fall off, and after 20 years, it falls off even more. It doesn't mean it's any less relevant, but your knowledge that you've built up over 20 years, it will hold you. Yes, you have new standards, but they don't change totally overnight. Now let's contrast that with something which is important from my perspective, which is the second line there on critical thinking. In fact, it ends up as the topmost line. It's in that slightly bluish gray color. And regardless of where you are in your journey, this critical thinking space, this ability to understand how climate change, how environment, how social inequality is going to impact our business. This is all going to be important throughout your career. And then when it comes to technology skills, you will see that this is that sort of that line in between technology where it covers coding, application development. Those areas will be important, but it will be probably less important over time, right? That combines with quantitative statistical data as well, which you see is that kind of orange line. But when it comes to communication, collaboration, team working, which both Pakade and Olivier mentioned, this is something that you need to build all throughout. And I think that problem is harder in the early part of your career because, with the lack of experience, you're wondering how are you going to communicate with others, but you need to spend time on that. You need to learn from others. You probably need to come to KICPAA for courses on, communication skills, etc. But, take the opportunity to improve yourself here because these are almost like lifelong skills that you will need throughout, and it needs to stay with you all throughout. So with that, I'm going to just pause here. Darith, I'm not sure if I've exceeded the time. I apologize if I have, and we can then go straight to the questions if you want.
No, thank you so much, Sarah. Very, very informative. And I love the way you share the practical result from the research. And I really love the last point you made on the strategic skills, which I think we might build on later on. But due to the time constraint, we might move to the next session that we have, which is Q&A session. I encourage our participants to write their questions, use your time, right? Because I hope we have a combination of what I said earlier, the taste and the flavor from the different key speakers, ranking from the business contingency plan, stabilization of the business, and also coming back to the digital adoptions and also the last point that Sarah made on the strategic skills. So we have a good information to start with to build up on and clarify from our speakers. Before I take the question from the participant, I would like to build on with one head-up question for all speakers. So when we are talking about stabilizing the business or surviving the business to make sure it's running during this crisis, there are two things that we, on top of other element or dimension of the business, there are two things that pop up for us. One is money, cash. We need to have cash. Secondly, we need to have people motivated and inspired. So to us, liquidity and emotional management are key to successfully overcome the challenges. So to all of you as speakers, how do you successfully manage this in the most efficient and effective way? Thank you. So to you, Pakade, Sarah, and Olivia.
I can briefly how I manage.
Yes.
I would just say it's transparency and communication. It's very important that people are informed of where we are going to, what are the challenges we are facing. So it's not only the CEO or the CFO in their office who are just concerned. It's everybody. And I mean, at the first layer is the key manager, and key manager should be informed. You cannot keep for yourself. So that's the first thing is communication, transparency, and I would say you got to be realistic, and also need to inform of people of what are the potential consequences. I think it's very important that people are facing risk. The company is facing risk, but people also are facing risk. We are in crisis situation.
Thank you. Valid point you made, Olivia. May I invite Sarah and Pakade to jump in if you have any comments on that.
Well, I see Pakade is not off mute, so let me go first. No, I totally agree with Olivia, and you know, just to add a different context to it, Darith, I think it's important for businesses to take a long-term view of the changes that they're going to make in the short term, because employees will remember how they've been treated. Customers will remember how they've been treated as we make any of these changes. So I would urge people to bear that in mind. I would also urge, and maybe I'm going to be very different when I say this, where you have your values and you know, sort of put out in websites, and you know, you make this part of your presentation when you sell products and things like that. Be mindful that you will be judged by your values, and so you want to come out on top of that. But all of this is something that we know, and to Olivia's point, we have to communicate very clearly with our people. We have to communicate very clearly, not just missed out suppliers. I think we also, a lot of organizations I've seen have been trying to, what's the word for it? Gain that extra bit of cash and time from suppliers, but they're in business too. So, you know, there's no rocket science way of approaching this, Darith. I think you've got to take it individually in your circumstances and make some hard determination, but never sacrifice your values.
Thank you. You made a very good point, Sarah. Pakade, are you there?
Yeah, I am. So just give a floor to the gentleman first. So ladies last this time. Yeah. Well, I think I totally agree with Olivia's and Sarah, right? So of course, through the communication, clarities, and to our staff, to our customer, and actually, I want to touch point on what Sarah had mentioned about value. So where my organization, where I'm actually coming from, is professionalism, value, integrity. So that's my my value as well. So I think not just to your staff, not just to your customers, you have to play the same thing. So you have your own value, you have your own care, or we call the I care. So it's something that we have to be mindful, and also with ethical as well. So I think in the chaos situation like this, people will judge you, will trust you. And the thing is just to manage the situation well. It's about to trust, how you actually build trust, right? To your staff, you build trust through your communication, through engagement, to accept the feedback, be able to understand what's going on, and you give a hand to support, right? So it's not just about it's just give and take or something that you have to balance, but at least you build a momentum trust, where you trust coming from, everything gonna be happening smoothly. So it about that, and more ethical. I'm trying to say this kind of thing. Some it's just like opportunities. Some opportunities they actually try to get some of it, but after the COVID position, people will learn about it for banks specifically, like we mentioned. So we have to understand our customers. If their situation is difficulty, they happen to asking you like delay payment sort of thing, which our government and our central bank actually has been reinforced as well, and bank also doing the same. We go in and say it happened to be have delay payment or schedule something like that. We actually have to allow for that. So in order they to manage cash flow effectively. So once you give them a hope and give them a help, there will be something that will be value you and gonna be long relationship. So this after post-COVID doesn't matter. It have to be with you because customer value you. They experience with you. They know that you always have so something that going on and build a long-term strategic partner as well. So that about it, Derek.
Thank you, Pakade. Very good point. I think a combination of different perspectives from different speakers is very, very practical. I think a lot of recommendation and tactics. I think it's a good time to start picking some of the questions from our participants. So we have several of them now. I would like to start with the first questions for Olivia. So there is one question for you, Olivia. So what is your opinion to get good AR and AP in the lockdown period? How to get good control of AR collection? Thank you.
How get good control of AR collection? The first thing I'm thinking about is and I would talk to the salespeople. And salespeople, they may have to be more selective on clients and ensure that those clients have sufficient liquidity. Okay, so that's I think very important. At least provide the service or deliver a service which you are sure that you're going to get paid for it, because you're going to mobilize resource and you're going to spend money and so make sure that your client has the capacity to pay you. So that's the first thing on the front side. On the back side, you recovery to recover your receivable. You really have to have the resource for that. Have people who are calling client who know the client situation. And so I would say you're going to have to spend more energy to collect your money and also follow up your client more strictly. That's my point.
Thank you, Olivia. I think it's a very good point. And the important thing in practice is people have to be very flexible to their own context in their own industry. Some service, some goods are very important, although during lockdown. So when the service and goods that you are in are very important, you have certain bargaining power. So your customer has no choice to pay you, right? Thank you. I would like to move to the next questions from our participant for Pakade. So the question for Pakade, they said, I understand that your bank may spend much investment on BCP. I assume BCP is the business contingency plan to ensure that the bank could operate as normal during disruption like lockdown case. Due to the cost of BCP, is it worth for the bank to spend on this cost and benefit analysis? What is your opinion for small organization or small bank? Thank you, Pakade.
Thank Darren and thank for the participant for the question. So business contingency it's not it depends on the size and depend on the core business, right? So I think it business contingency is not applied for the enterprise, the organization, even yourself. You mean you have to have a contingency as well. Let's say, oh, how much I earn? Say I earn $500. So what if in the next 5 months I don't have a job? What would I do, right? So basically, any business contingency plan, it had to be applied for personal or even the business. And come back to the bank. Of course, bank we actually accountable for everything. So it must to have. And since I think it become a regulate, which means that the central bank everywhere had to request all the banks to have all the business contingency plan, and business contingency plan have to be submit and review and have to be activated. They call like testing every 6 months or 1 year. It depends on the situation. But previously we more focused about theft, about flooding, electric cut out, about call banking distraction. So basically, it's not cost money, right? Except that currently that we have the pandemics and we start to thinking how to make a people work remotely without really.
Right, we seem to lost you.
Get them infected and still and have a like you have more ecosystem for a lot of customer. And like Olivia and Sarah have mentioned, if we want to get our long-term the business invest. Hello, yes. Bong, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So which means that we have to be start to invest a lot of money. So which means formation, or we actually do transform a platform for the customer. So this kind of thing, it happened that we cannot support the customer at the brand level. We can actually do an online, so something that will be invest a lot of money. But if happen to the local bank or small bank, we have to prioritize. We actually the benefit the most to our big customer. You have to prioritize, and then you actually invest the money accordingly. So I think it is not something like Sarah had mentioned, it's not the rocket science that we have, but we know that we customer in bidders. If we want to maintain the customer, if we want to support the business with the customer, and then we don't really let them go after COVID, we have to make sure that our core banking or support staff or technology be able to support them. So which means that we have to look into that partially. It depends on the scope of the bank. If you cannot support international payment, you have any partner for backup sorting. It like I say, it's not the answer. It's not really tell exactly what, but just about how you show the idea to the business head, and you start to cut one by one, and okay, at the minimum we can do this, at the maximum we can do this, and how much cost and how much we go into invest for this. So business contingency plan have to have it and need to update regularly, or otherwise we will less behind. It's not the sake of doing. We have to look into it and share among the people. Like let's say like finance, our team know already. Let's say we have categorized that, okay, we have the daily report, and then it up if anyone cannot deliver without 24 hours, what would we do? Okay, is it penalized? Is it a reputation issue? We say no, as long as we inform the NBC. So okay, then it becomes less prioritized, right? So it starts to that level, and we look into in that level and say, and then we give priority to the business and IT guy. Okay, so then you actually invest result to the front or the back end and operation probably much more, because even if the impact will be impact with our revenue. So it kind of like you see the slide of Olivia, allocate the result and the stream to where actually generated. So like I say, it have to be looked into one by one and depend on the business you are focusing to. So that's it from me.
Thank you, Pakade. Very informative and very practical, I think. I think due to the timing, we might be running 5 or 10 minutes late, and we might want to choose 1 or 2 more questions for the plenary. So we have several questions left, but I would have to pick and throw. So I think there are questions that are very relevant to the morale of staff and motivations of staff. And I would like to invite Sarah for the response first, and then followed by other speakers. So the question is, keeping staff morale high and motivation level in fact and order, can you share some of the good practical advice relevant to the market like Cambodia? Thank you, sir.
Okay, I think the harder part of that question is relevant to Cambodia, because I will admit upfront that I'm not totally familiar with Cambodia as a market. However, I can speak more broadly as someone who has lived through and worked through the Asian financial crisis, the global financial crisis, and now with this as well. It comes back to something that Olivier touched on, which is, you know, from the employee perspective, we must put ourselves in their shoes and ask ourselves what's going through their mind. You know, what are they concerned about? Are they concerned about that their salaries will be paid, will not be paid? How do we put out the messages to them that are true? Because let me put it to you this way: from my experience as being someone very young in the Asian financial crisis to now, our people are smart. They get it. Even when you try and use some nice, wonderful, fancy words, they will know when you're telling them the truth and when you're not. So I would urge people to be upfront in that process, to try and give them a sense of what the future is going to be like. Yes, to some extent, depending on your business, it could be quite bleak. And your people already know this, right? If they're in front line, they're in back line, they are seeing the numbers, even without the benefit of a ledger, even without the benefit of the balance sheet, they know it. So don't lose your personal value and credibility by trying to tell them otherwise. So if you have a better than that position, then I think there's lots that you can do, because I am a true believer that the crisis affords opportunities, and your people will be willing to work the extra mile, extra hours, in fact, in order to all pull out of this. I would also say, and this is my view, this is not ACC's view, that depending on your organization, sometimes it is better to keep your solutions in a way that you are able to keep all of your staff force, versus at the worst point in their time, in your organization and in their life, you decide to just let people go. I'm not a big fan of that. I think there's a need and a desire to change your staff and weed out poor performers, but surely this is the worst time to be doing that. So I recognize when I say that this is not exactly what the HR guys will advise, but I say that from someone who has gone through 3 crises.
Thank you, Sarah. I think you have complemented the point and much appreciated. I think due to the time, we might want to conclude the sessions. So for all of you, Sarah, Pakade, and Olivier, any last point or comment or recommendation that you want to make in 20 seconds to our participants? Thank you.
Hi.
Go ahead, Pakade. Go ahead.
Lady first. Okay. Lady first.
Lady first. Thank you very much. Thank you. So not long. So I know that everyone's is also the same mood, the same emotion. Be kind of like bumpy, you know, just on and off, and not everyone feel, you know, certainty at the same time. Because like the leader, they have to take care for business. They also need to take care for the staff, and the staff also similarly take care of yourself, family, and work. Make sure their job is security. So to me, through what happening now, you just stay calm. You know, you stay calm. You actually need to focus. You, if happen, you be a subordinate. You have to follow your line manager instruction and don't feel afraid. Just ask what's going on to get more clarity, and you keep trust, or otherwise you're gonna be even feel grief because you don't know what's going on, and then you feel even worse in this situation, and get a courage to move on. I mean, it happened that thing like that, you have to accept it. It is not where you happen to be like, oh, previously I'm not that, but why I'm that. Don't really try to compare, because situation is evolved, nobody knows. So just keep agile and think about what needs to be done and what you actually can focus to deliver for yourself, for your organization, and keep everyone safe at this situation. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Pakade. Sarah?
Thanks, Derek. Look, I think, again, I started my presentation with, preparing for the decade of 2020. So my advice to people is, where do you want to see yourself at the end of this decade? And prepare for that now. Again, I will marry that with what I said a little earlier. Never let a crisis, the opportunities from this crisis, go to waste. I think there's tremendous, I will hold a different view. I think this is one of the best times to be an accountant. I honestly do. Because if you grew up in my time, your best friend was a photocopier and you were standing at the photocopier, photocopying documents as audit evidence. You're not in that space now. You have an opportunity to play with these tools, to use analytics, to sound smart. So this is a great time to be an accountant. I know this is a challenging time, but use this crisis as an opportunity to change. And I think judge yourself by where you will be in 2030.
Thank you, Sarah. Olivia, 20 seconds.
Yes, 20 seconds. Just give me 10 seconds. I come back on the last question. Somebody asked me on the AR. I would like to add something. If your clients had some difficulty to pay you, of course, your AR people will talk first to him. But at a certain stage, maybe the CFO can get in touch with the clients. And as a CFO, you can also help your clients, because you understand balance sheet and so on. So your client may not have a solution. I'm talking about disposing of assets or this kind of thing. So you might be in a position to help your client to find cash. This is very important, helping each other. And the other thing is that, again, my conclusion on this is being honest. Don't lose your value. And as Sharad said, people are smart. So they also feel the situation, and they're also preparing their B plan. So don't lose your value. This is very important. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Oliver. Thank you, everyone. Right. I think we have enough. And I know when we have wonderful time, it always goes too fast, right? I do hope you have enjoyed and gained relevant practical knowledge, tactics, tips, and most importantly, techniques from our various key speakers. There are a lot of know-how and takeaway from this morning session to successfully overcome the COVID-19 challenges. Not as a surprise, there are a lot of common tips and recommendations from our key speakers. That's a very good point. Whether to develop scenario, from the contingency plan, to digital transformation and adoptions, leadership of people with strategic changes, building up resilience with priorities on liquidity. I'm excited to learn from Sarah today that accounting can save and will save the world. And the strategic skill that you shared is very, very, very good point that the speaker made. By that, KICPAA would like to wrap this up with the special thanks to our speakers. Firstly, to Pakade for your time and your great insights to share with us today to overcome uncertainty and chaos. Really appreciate for your detailed and comprehensive sharings. Special thanks to Oliver for your time and practical sharings. And I love your techniques, how to become a strategic player. Really helpful. Thank you. And last but not least, to Sarah, Martin, for your time and comprehensive and detailed roadmap for preparing of decades of 2020s. It's really, really informative and a lot of information for our accountants. Thank you. Also, we would not forget to thank our participants and apology for the delay of our time, and thank for your full attention and participation. Also, special thanks to our secretary team. Without them, we would not have a wonderful webinar like this. We also apologize that we could not address all of the questions raised by our participants, and we still have a lot of questions, you know. An apology for any inconvenience that might unintentionally caused. On a related matter, you might have access to more information about KICPAA, our member, other information from our website. Please feel free to reach out KICPAA directly should you have any questions or assistance. And don't forget, please kindly complete the feedback form and download the PowerPoint upon receiving our thank you letter. Yeah. Once again, on behalf of KICPAA, we thank you for your attention, participation, and valuable time in joining this webinar. And we hope KICPAA will organize this type of webinar very often during 2021 and throughout 2022 and after, because we want to serve our member better. We want to serve our accounting profession better, and we want to serve our country better. So stay tuned with our more event and program and be active. And most importantly, search out to become our member now, okay? So that you can have more information, access to more resources, okay? So thank you. Please stay safe and healthy. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Goodbye. I think we are running out of time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good day and stay safe.
Bye-bye.